Hi, I'm Allison Dubois, and this is Tom McMullen. And today we're going to talk about December 21st of 2020. So Tom, there's some pretty cosmically big things coming up for us.
Yes.
And you're going to sum up what all the astrologers seem to be talking about, this date of December 21st, 2020, and how you might see it.
Yes, so we're going to talk about two planets that have decided to come together. They're the planet Saturn, which rules restriction, limitations, and rules of life. And then Jupiter, which does the opposite. It expands and adds to something that it's involved in. They're coming together. So when those two planets come together in a sign, it changes the energy with the sign, and it's going into Aquarius. Now, to be honest with you, they go into a sign like every 20 years, okay? They conjoin and oppose every 20 years. And so in 1980, they were conjoined. In 1990, they were opposing. And then in 2000, they were conjoined, and then they were opposition. So now we're in 2020, so they're conjoining again, okay?
Aren't we all tired of contractions by now?
But
That's a lot.
for the last 200 years, their conjunctions and this dance they've been doing was always in one particular element. So from 1802 to present, they were always in the earth signs, okay? So what's happening now, 200 years later, is that now they will switch into the air signs for the next 200 years, starting with Aquarius, going to Gemini, and then Libra. So that's very significant because it changes the entire energy of a 200-year period of what it means when those two come together.
That's a big deal.
It's a big deal. And that's why the astrologers are talking about it, because it's the end of a 200. And again, if you look at our country in 1802, and it was all in earth signs, how have we developed in the last 200 years?
Construction.
Land, just building this country. We built this country, and then we built our economic system and our capitalistic system that we have today. Money and land has been everything, you see. And so now that's sort of, not that it comes to an end, but it's going to change drastically into an air quality. And air is intellect, innovation, especially in Aquarius, and communication. So this changes. This is where we really get into the AI of things, you know, the innovation, robotics, and the detachment. Instead of the earth grounding us, we're in this upper level of our intellect and mindset of our future. And this is where I'm hoping I'm finally going to get to see my flying car from the Jetsons.
I hope you get that flying car.
Yes, that would be wonderful.
And the maid, Rosie.
Oh, Rosie, well, there you go. There's Rosie. See, the Jetsons were way ahead of their time.
They were.
Yes.
So Jupiter represents travel also.
It represents travel.
And it's been in restrictive Capricorn. For how long has it been in restrictive Capricorn?
Well, it's been in Capricorn for this last year.
Okay, and it was very restrictive travel.
And Jupiter doesn't like being in the sign of Capricorn, which is why again, we look at the virus of this year that we were in, and that it expanded something that limited our movement, essentially, and destroyed the travel and industry, essentially.
And then it leaves and goes into Aquarius, and Aquarius is an innovative traveler, I guess she would read that as, like travel changing.
And again, I think it's more of our mindset. We're moving into the mind part of our development. And so, you know, we talk about Aquarius like being isolationist.
Yes.
So whatever happens in the political arena that happens during this new election, there'll be people that go, I don't want to be part of this. I'm going off into the woods. I'm going to go buy a cabin. I want to separate from all the stuff we've been going through. People want to isolate themselves. People may want to isolate themselves in different environments, not in corporate buildings anymore, being in their home environment. People may leave the country because they don't want to live with what the new...
Aquarius rules computers too.
Yes, it does.
And if people want to leave the country, I don't really care. I mean, have a safe flight.
Well, and again, the whole point is the globalization and innovation is the last several hundred years have put us now into this space with the last 30 years of technology, and that technology will go through the ceiling. But
technology is debatable on whether it's good or bad. People have different feelings on that.
Well, we talk about, you know, a dependency on technology. So if we're all on one grid and someone switches the switch, you know, that's a huge thing to consider. So, you know, I mean, we move from what we've talked about in terms of wars in conflict being the way they used to be,
right.
and it doesn't move into technology where we shut down electrical systems and things like that.
That's a frightening thought. I mean, that somebody could flip a switch and all of your, I've said to Joe this before though, if they just shut it down for a couple of days so people could see how they would get through life just for 2 days without it, how lost we'd all be.
So the generation that grew up with nothing but technology
right.
won't know what to do without it. I mean, you and I will, because we know how to live without it.
We all marvel at how great they are at computers. My youngest daughter's always like, Mom, I can't believe you can't get this. And like she immediately fixes whatever I can't seem to figure out.
Right.
But our generations can be very helpful to them.
Yes.
Should they not have their technology?
Yes.
Because we know some tricks.
Yes.
We know how to get things done.
Yeah.
So, I think it's important for all the generations to come together in 2021 and know that we really need each other right now.
Yeah.
But shutting the grid down, being from Arizona, air conditioning, are you kidding me?
Yeah, I know. That's again, would we move away if that happened? I mean, I would.
That's true. That's true. Because my great grandfather was here in the 1940s before there was air conditioning, and they, go to the public pool to cool off during the day. I mean, it was a different time.
Right.
But now we have so much AC and resorts. It's just a different world here.
Well, you're going to find that Saturn being an Aquarius itself, the planet that rules Capricorn, is now in the sign of change of systems.
The freedom, love, and fool.
Yeah. So, and again, in this, Saturn was in Aquarius in the early 30s, and this is when we had historically.
Was that like prohibition?
No, it was coming out of the Depression.
But wouldn't you say, much like what's happening right now, the Great Depression, for instance, people are being forced to live in ways they never thought they'd have to live. But after the Great Depression, a lot of the people came out of it wiser, more innovative, starting businesses. And I think it did. I mean, I've just been watching something on that time period lately, and it just seemed to really help them to move through the other things that happened in life, like World War II.
Right.
And it just seemed to make them very strong and have to think outside of the box.
Right. And
which is what we've had to do.
More self-sufficient too.
Closer family
units.
And friends have to rely on one another, which
and
they
creating
don't always like to do.
Suburban neighborhoods now, and moving out of cities and these types of things. Well, we look at another time that Saturn was in Aquarius was in the early 60s, and this started giving. We know what started in the early 60s. And then
Mad Men.
Yes, exactly. But again, women coming into the workplace, starting to shift. And then it really took off when the planet Pluto sat next to the planet that rules Aquarius, Uranus, in 65, 66. And this was the massive social revolutionary changes of the 60s.
It's the beginning of Vietnam.
Vietnam, the civil rights movement, the women's liberation movement, the gay rights movement, protesting in the street, burning flags, becoming hippies and going off the grid, living in communes. And it was a completely exact example of what it would be like if you went into an Aquarian energy and changed the system. So we're going to go into another similar time.
I'm an Aquarius, but the whole hippie thing, I don't get it. Don't get the communes,
Well, that's when people want to belong to the same group of the same mindset.
Right.
Aquarians want to find their individual tribe that just reflects them. Okay, so if they don't, then they're either kicked out of the people that don't accept them, or they leave it.
I call that Joe and our 3 daughters. That works for me. But and you're seeing some of that right now, but these are angry little hippies that are out there right now. These aren't the flower power hippies that we like to think of in the 60s.
No, because that generation, my generation, the boomers, didn't trust the government, didn't trust the system, you know. And so our freedom was to say, we're going to make our own rules, our own regulations, our own systems.
They didn't trust their parents. I mean, it was all like a microcosm of a macrocosm. That was very apparent.
But the funny thing is that the boomers did do that, and then they went right back into the system and created...
Oh, they became the yuppies.
Yes.
In a system that they said they hated.
Yes.
The irony.
The irony of it all, yes,
So maybe there's hope for the protesters yet, and I mean the angry protesters, not the peaceful protesters, obviously. So that's a lot, and that happens around Christmas. So a lot's going to get shaken up.
Well, it'll really present itself, as we move into the new year, because we're going to have an election. We're going to have, inauguration in January.
Right.
So, everyone's going to get prepared for, like, who do we have? What do we do now?
Right.
So, and they're so extreme in their nature, so we don't know until
everything's extreme right now. So over December then, how would people plan for all of this? This is upheaval around the world.
Oh yeah, this is all world orders.
World orders.
We've been in a redo of the world orders for quite a while now, and so this year, 2020, is where we're really seeing the significance. You see Hong Kong, wanting to break free from communist China and the difficulties they're having. We saw Brexit, and the conflicts they have there.
Ireland.
Right. And then there's the Middle East. So this is going on all over the world, but our country has its own identity in terms of how
we've got cameras on our phones, so I think you see a little more from our country, because you don't go to jail for having a phone with a camera on in our country.
Right. And that changed a lot, actually. I would say, before, the internet was one thing, social media was another, but the smartphone that has a camera wherever you go really made a difference.
Yes. I mean, I actually like the cameras on the streets, because they go back in crimes and are able to see where the victim was last seen. But I do remember I think I was like 12 or 13, people are like, no, you don't want the man to be in control. He's gonna be looking at you everywhere you go. He's got his eyes on you.
Yeah.
And people were freaking out.
Well, people are still today freaking out.
I love that system.
Yeah.
It's great.
But people feel they're being spied on all the time, and they're going to collect all their information, which obviously Facebook does, and all the other.
But until something bad happens to them, and then they're like glad it was there. So I mean, it goes both ways.
Yeah.
So that sounds like I'm going to get the biggest Christmas tree I ever got, because in 2021, it's a new world order.
Yeah.
That's what we're going into.
Yeah. It's the beginning of one, because it's innovation in a time. And the planet Jupiter expands whatever it touches. Saturn creates new systems in what it touches. In terms of Aquarius, it is a revolutionary time of changing systems, which we already know is going on and in the process. And Jupiter is expanding innovation. It'll expand medicine. And I think one of the things the pandemic's done is really making us focus on our medical system, our health system.
Yes, it's good.
And so whatever happens in terms of our health care, that's going to happen.
I think they're going to accidentally find cures for other things while they're trying to cure the pandemic. This is happening for a reason. I know people don't like to hear that, but this has to happen. Sometimes you have to tear down to build up.
Yep.
I would also say in Aquarius for 2021 moving forward, I think wars are going to be fought differently.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be fought through technology.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because we already have a hint of it that people talk about. Whether we have airborne viruses and chemical warfare, these types of things, or if we have, someone's trying to shut down our electrical system, as a retaliation, whatever it is. I mean,
And then what do we do as a response to that? We need to have a plan going into 2021 just to be not caught off guard. But I think the pandemic has given us a bit of a heads up on other things that may be existing in countries that don't like us, that could be created, maybe they weren't, but that exist. And we want to make sure that we're prepared for anything, so that if it comes in next time, we know how to deal with it.
And this has taught us that,
the pandemic, I mean, have you ever? I mean, we've never seen this. This is what, it was 100 years ago, the last one, the Spanish flu, is that what it was?
And maybe it becomes more frequent, but we're prepared, like you said, or we anticipate these things. The interesting thing in a general way, for 200 years, the energy's been very earthly, very grounded.
Planting, farming.
And very
growing.
basic survival.
Right.
This is a completely different level of survival from a higher consciousness point of view. So for all the New Agers out there, this may be your time as we raise our consciousness
all the New Agers,
to our humanity.
Your crystals out under the moon.
Yes, but it is interesting, because it makes us go to our higher thoughts, our better places, rather than to fear our survival at the most primitive levels.
Right.
And so, again, those that want to raise their consciousness is to look at your humanity and not your individual self.
Well, and that's all very good advice. And I would say the isolationist part of this is going to be really interesting to watch, because even just being at home for the time that we've been, quarantining, when they opened up the restaurants, we thought, we'll go, because they have the tables 6 feet apart, and it was fine. And we're there, and there was just this like toddler running around the room, and I thought, I could get this to go, and I could eat it at my house, and she can't come in. Look at that. I think a lot of people are at home realizing how stressful the outside world became, and how we became almost just immune to it. Like we just didn't hear or see. We shut down our senses. I mean, it was just crazy to have that epiphany. I'm like, I like eating at home with Joe. Yeah. It's nice. So a lot of people are going to be at home, and they've learned to cook. Yeah. I learned how to make a lemon cheesecake, peanut butter brownies. I mean, I've been all over the place with these. And it's been great, because I never had time to do that.
Yeah.
Not recently, not in the last 20 years of my life. And it was refreshing, and it was a restart button for me. And I think a lot of people feel that way. It's like, let's start over. Now, what do I want? What do we want to do?
Exactly. In the previous video, talking about that, the second half of 2020 is to really focus on what it is you want to do now that changes your life from things you couldn't do before.
Yes.
So now when you get into 2021, how do you implement that? How do you look at the big system and where we are politically, where we are with our laws and our rules as they change,
right.
how you can sort of slot yourself into what it is you want to do that gets you what you want in your life. Without dependencies on others to a degree, but also know that you have the freedoms to choose, right. that you can go into a direction you never thought you could go into because it didn't exist before.
That's exciting.
Yes.
So yay, something to look forward to. Well, you heard it here. So I'm Allison Dubois.
I'm Tom McMullen.
Thank you for joining us. Till next time.